afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Can you hear me? So I have a microphone, but our presenters don't. But these guys, I think they can project well enough. But let me know if you can't hear me in the back of the room. So I'm Margaret Perot. I'm the president and CEO of the Batavia Chamber. This is our Active Threat and Situational Awareness Seminar provided by Controlled Force. These two representatives are from Controlled Force, a local Batavia security business. I will introduce them in a second. We have a couple comments. I mean, we know what happened at Six Flags sadly last night, but we know that there's an increase in active shooter events in recent years, and many are close to home. The Henry Pratt and Aurora Uvalde school shooting, the Highland Park 4th of July shooting, and the recent Weather Tech Factory shooting in Bolingbrook, again, and the Highland Park and Six Flags Great America shooting last night. These are all horrific events, and we are thankful that we have security and law enforcement officers trained to be prepared to spring to action and help our community. Controlled Force is taking action to help businesses, schools, and places of worship in our area to feel safer. I'd like to introduce these wonderful gentlemen who will talk about these topics. First of all, we have Aaron Mareskis. He's the Senior Director of Administration at Controlled Force. Aaron has served as an Illinois law enforcement officer with municipal, county, and state agencies. His prior experience includes patrol, investigations, SWAT, field training, evidence technician, defensive tactics, and tactical response instructor assignments. Mr. Mareskis has been a Controlled Force certified instructor since 2010 and is a graduate of the NACSA Command College, the Northwestern Center for Public Safety Supervision of Police Personnel course, and the Penn State University Justice and Safety Institute Leadership and Command course. Rob Serra is the SLED manager, state local education. He has 15 years of experience as an Illinois enforcement officer. He held positions as a range officer, firearms instructor, department armory custodian, rapid response instructor, field training officer, and school resource officer. Rob continues to serve as a certified police officer in a part-time status. As a U.S. Marine, Rob spent 10 years conducting both real-world and training operations in the infantry field, including combat operations in Iraq in 2003. Joining Controlled Force in January of 2019, Rob brought his law enforcement and military experience to the training world. Along with managing state and local education opportunities, Rob is one of the lead instructors for de-escalation and situational awareness. Rob is also a tactical movement instructor, physical security consultant, and school and workplace safety instructor. Rob is the lead instructor for the Controlled Force armed and unarmed security courses, as well as certified NRA and Illinois concealed carry firearms instructor. So we're going to start I'm going to ask these guys to talk a little bit about themselves and let them know why they are experts in their field and how they can help us. We'll then have a question and answer. We have 10 prepared questions for these gentlemen, and then we'll open it up to our guests here to have questions. So first of all, I'm going to turn it over to you, Rob. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered it. I'm, pretty humble, but very happy to be here. Hoping that we can give some insight, and I would say more or less some security in your minds, and have a discussion about what's going on, why it's happening, and what we can do as a community to mitigate these issues. Aaron?
I just want to thank everybody for your time today. Quick favor for those of you in the back. I do have a tendency to lose pitch at the end, so if one of you are having trouble hearing me, just point to the ceiling and I will invoke a little bit louder, since I think that would be easier than asking you to move to the front of the class here. Hey, we're here. This is an important topic. I know that Rob spoke with the chamber, I believe a couple years ago prior to the COVID event. Uvalde, Texas. That one really strikes home for me. We have seen active shooters in schools for several years now. We have worked on mitigating these issues. We've worked on training these issues. I have kids that go to elementary schools, so this directly impacts me at home. It wasn't until late May of this year when we were sitting in our office attempting to strategize what we could do to help when actually the owners of the company, their oldest son, who just graduated from high school here at Marvin Academy, walked in and said, you know guys, we protect government facilities, we train the cops, we train the Department of Defense, why can't we do something to make these schools safe? That's a large impetus of why we're here today, and I'm hoping that throughout the course of our discussion, each of you can take one thing, just one piece of information that'll make you better, your family safer, and our community stronger. So thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Erin. We'll begin with our questions now. Can you provide an overview of some things that can be done by individuals right now to help keep our facilities and homes safe?
So I'll kick this one off. Lock your doors, right? I say that in jest, but if we utilize that idea, that concept, and create patterns in our lives, we make things habitual for us. Locking doors helps us understand the condition of our home, right? When I go to bed at night, I know that the doors are locked. My alarm is set. I live in the town of Maple Park. Do you guys even know where Maple Park is? Show of hands. Yeah. Not much happens there, but I've got 2 dogs. I've got a home alarm system. I've got locks on the doors. I check those every night by force of habit. By doing that, it helps me be more situationally aware. I know the condition of my house. I know and understand the condition of my vehicle, which is about half empty on gas, so if anybody wants to make a financial contribution. Right? But knowing and understanding these things. You don't have to go from being an average everyday citizen to being a SWAT operator or a special weapons type of guy or gal. You have to take advantage of the small actions on a daily basis and allow those to build and compound, right? So I say it jokingly, lock your doors. That's step number 1, lock your doors. Know what the condition of your vehicle is in. Know what the condition of your house is in. Know what condition you're in. What action steps can we take right now? Physical fitness is a big part of it. Go for a walk. Read a book. Again, you don't have to be an Olympian, but maybe we spend 15, 20 minutes a day in that physical preparation, 5 minutes a day in that mental preparation, taking advantage of the wealth of knowledge and content that is out there, very much like what you're doing today. Bob?
In my years in law enforcement, usually working in the suburbs, smaller communities, we always see some type of crime, right? Whether it's cars being broken into, we get a call, hey, someone burglarized my car overnight. Great. 99% of the time we show up, what happened? There's no damage to the vehicle, there's no damage to the windows. Oh yeah, I left my car unlocked. Yeah, you left your computer in there and some other stuff in there, right? So as Erin said, start getting into a habit of checking your stuff, checking your house, checking all that, so that once you get that happening, then you can build on it, as Erin said, okay, and do training and that type of thing. The other thing we always hear, someone's house gets burglarized, and they say, oh yeah, I'm going to go out and buy a gun, right? Okay, that's your prerogative, but I'm afraid someone's going to break into my house in the middle of the night. Great. I will tell you right now, from a law enforcement perspective, 99% of burglaries happen during the day in homes. Okay? The chance of someone coming to your house in the middle of the night, kicking the door down and coming after you is very, very, very slim. Very slim. And the handful of those that I've seen, or home invasions that I've seen, the person coming in was getting something from that person. There was a backstory to it. So there's that. As far as the neighborhood goes, neighborhood watch. Know your neighbors. Know the cars in your neighborhood. All right? Don't be afraid to speak up if you see something weird. Okay? Talk to your neighbors about it. Get into that a little bit.
Thanks.
Thank you.
What would you give as your first piece of advice to someone who is not security-minded? We kind of touched on this, but I think you could go a little bit more in depth.
We did touch on it. Who here flies? Who's taken a plane trip recently, right? All right, so when you get on an aircraft, what happens? If you look around during the safety brief, right, the stewardess or the flight attendants up there going through their thing, right? Look around the aircraft. How many people are buried in their computers? How many people are reading a book? How many people are sleeping, doing that type of thing, right? What I'm getting at here is awareness. Okay? As they say, the exit closest to you may be behind you, all right? So if we start to get a situational awareness mindset about where you are, what's around you, and set a baseline for where you are, that's really going to help you out. Okay? So you know your neighborhood, right? Start there. You know your neighbors. You know what cars should be there, what cars shouldn't be there. Okay? From there, you go out in public. Take a look around. All right? See where people are parked. If you're walking through a parking lot at Meyer or somewhere like that, is there someone just sitting in a car? Okay. Why are they doing that? What's going on? But keep an eye out. So if you get that situational awareness mindset going first, at home, out in public, that's going to help you greatly.
Yeah. So, Margaret, I'm sorry. Can I get up and move around?
Of course.
I apologize.
You're not tracked.
Yeah. It's very hard for me to sit. I'm a mover and a shaker. Is this okay with everybody? All right? All right. So you saw me grab my phone, because this is what I see 90% of the world doing today as they're walking, right? I kid you not, Maple Park, again, show of hands, huge town, all right? I was at Lee stoplight in town. I made the right to go northbound on County Line Road. There's a group of kids walking across the street looking at their phone, right? Now, it's not an active threat, it's not an active shooter, very low likelihood that anybody's going to get hurt. But what are the chances it's not somebody who's paying attention in their vehicle? Or worst case yet, because I know we all still see them, you got this guy driving, right? So what can we do immediately, not being security or conscious mind? Pay attention, right? Quick scans on everything that we do. Learn how to read rooms. Learn how to read buildings. This room is phenomenal. The only reason I did like sitting in this seat is I can use that glass back there off the double doors where that gentleman is standing, and I can see everybody who's coming down the hallway because it's got a mirrored effect, right? Allows me to make an opportunity to move first. Learn and know these things. A lot of women in the classroom. You all carry purses? All right, great. Is it as heavy as my wife's? Because she's like an amateur power lifter to get that thing into the shopping cart. Let me ask you, how many of you, when you go to the store, you throw that thing right where the kids are supposed to go and you push the cart around the store? Anybody? Yeah, no, she stopped doing that, right?
Wrap it around the handle.
Yeah, wrap it around the handle. Keep it on your person. Hey, is there a way that we can slim that down and leave it in my vehicle if I don't need it, right? There are things that as you learn to pay attention, you're going to start picking up. A lot of it is going to be about the behaviors and actions of people, right? I love the quick acronym BAHD, B-A-H-D. Note takers, write that down. All right, body, actions, hands, and demeanor, okay? Body, what position are they in? Seated, standing, are they running? I mean, outside of seeing somebody wearing like a bright orange Nike running suit and some really nice bright running shoes, is it just strange to see people running down the street? Okay, thank you. I thought it was just me. All right? So we pay attention to these things. What kind of actions are they doing? Is that person out for a jog? No, they're wearing all dark clothing and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and that guy Rob told me that burglaries happen in the middle of the day and it's really weird because he's carrying a TV, right? So it helps me put the pieces of the puzzle together. Their hands. To me, you know, a lot of romantics will say that the eyes are the window to the soul. I believe that the hands are, right? You can't craft anything without the use of your hands and your fingers. There's not much we can do. We're in a house of worship. Can we pray absent our hands? Very difficult, right? There's a warming sensation when we do this. There's other things. It can also give you a quick idea of my body language. Do I want to be here right now? And now I'm completely disinterested. And now I'm back and engaged with you, right? So, demeanor kind of being the last. Pay attention to people's demeanors, right? There's a lot of things, almost like a dog, right? Can a dog bite while it's wagging its tail? Absolutely, right? So when we engage with people and when we're out in a public setting, we need to make sure that we're constantly assessing demeanor, right? For me right now, it's figuring out who's uninterested so I can pick on them in a few minutes and put some questions back on all of you. But hey, Rob, back to you. I don't know if you have any follow-up on that.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron made a very, very good point as far as you know, situational awareness and that type of thing, and looking at the hands, and also the demeanor. In law enforcement, we look and we judge people all the time. Okay, we get lied to a lot. All right, over little things, and big things, but mostly little things, right? One lie leads to another. Thing is, you can tell when people are lying just from the way they're acting, right? The other thing is that we assess threats through the hands, okay? Not only are they carrying a gun, but if someone's standing like this with their fist clenched and they're postured a certain way, we know we got an issue there, right? So keeping an eye, making eye contact with people is a pretty good deal. Give you a quick backstory. Has anyone ever been to New York City? All right. Subway? Anyone? All right.
A restaurant or in New York City?
No, like in New York City. Yeah, Subway New York.
A Subway
Subway restaurant in New York, right, in Times Square. So I was on a trip with my family, my mother-in-law, my wife, one of my cousins. We're all standing in the subway, all had their purses. My uncle and I observed two guys kind of beelining and looking at them. All we did was we turned and we made eye contact with these guys. And they kind of went, oh, okay, game's up. Walked away, look for somebody else. So if you don't look like a victim and you make eye contact with somebody, it's either going to challenge them or they're going to back up. Okay? Anything else?
Good to go.
Great.
And if they feel challenged, then what's your next?
Then we yeah, we'll get into de-escalation and that type of thing. It all depends on the situation.
Good information. Not everyone in our community has a military or law enforcement background. What can we do as civilians, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, to help our community be safe? And that being said, as non-tactically trained people, can we really make a difference?
So I'll kick this one off. This is a great question. It is subliminally loaded with content and information. So you guys mind if I steal my cheat sheet? That way I can stay on top of it here. So what can civilians, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters help our community safe? All right, there's quite a bit you can do, actually, okay? I'll start at the home because that's kind of the epicenter for our community. Going back to the idea of locking doors, what's the condition of your house? What are the condition of your family members? What's the condition of your vehicles? What do you have there in stock and prepared to mitigate and deal with any disasters, right? Because safety goes beyond the idea of a bad actor has taken a bad action. It has to go to, are we prepared for natural disasters? Kentucky just got overwhelmed with flooding. There's a lot of people significantly impacted by that. We have a river here. That river can and does have the ability to crest, right? I have my wife, because I don't know what the inside of the grocery store looks like anymore. Every time she goes, hey babe, just grab a couple of extra cans of non-perishable foods, right? Things that will store, things that will last. Grab a couple extra candles. Always have batteries on hand. Little things that you can do inside of your home, right? Now, we get outside of the home, talk about your immediate community, be the example on your block. Absolutely 100% be the example on your block. As you go down this path of becoming more security focused and more security conscious, security aware, you set the example for your neighbors to follow. When you're having those discussions with them at the Sunday barbecue, speak about what you are doing, right? How you're picking up extra food items. Talk about how you're preparing your family. Talk about classes you've attended, knowledge and content that you have learned or gleaned from others. Take those opportunities to do those reviews, right? Be the example on your block. It just takes one person to get up, set that example, to begin the dance. The others will begin to participate with you, making it more of a community effort. From there, you expand out. Get involved in your community. Whether it's through a neighborhood watch program, whether it's through events that are provided by the park district or the village, the city that you reside in. Be a leader in the business community, right? This is a Chamber of Commerce event. I'm assuming that you all are business leaders and decision makers. Make sure that you are setting the tone for your peers to follow. Identify ways that you can mutually share resources. Communicate that out to other business leaders. Interestingly enough, Rob and I were having a discussion not too long ago. In law enforcement, in the fire world, and in the military world, everything is done by mutual aid. And what I mean by that is if I live in city number 1, thank you, If I live in city number 1 and I don't have access to a number of floodlights that I might need, but Rob has them, I can be a mutual aid resource for Rob and get him those resources when he needs them. And likewise, he can get them to me, right? So from a business perspective, these are things that you can do. Are there any insurance companies or organizations in here? Just one? Deb, can you do this for me for the next couple? It's a very quick lesson learned. Actually was investigating a series of burglaries in the city of Chicago. The department didn't have the resources that we needed to conduct the investigation very thoroughly. Went to the insurance company. You know what the insurance company did? Gave us everything we needed. Why? They wanted to recoup their loss as well, right? So work with your insurance companies. There are incentives that they will provide for you to put in safety programs inside of your business. Utilize those materials as a shared resource with each other. So I started small, I went really big, I just threw your insurance company under the bus. I'll kick it back to you, sir.
You know, there's been a huge uptick in firearms sales and purchases, right? I'm seeing this firsthand as a firearms instructor. Oh, I got to get my concealed carry. Oh, I got to buy a gun. Oh, I bought this. Oh, I bought that. Okay, great. People who aren't tactically minded all of a sudden think they are tactically minded. All right, that is a dangerous place to be. Also, I see people with AR-15s. They buy an AR-15, $5,000 AR-15. They come to a basic class and they go, "Yeah, here's my rifle." I'm like, you know what you need to do? Go ahead and sell that. Go buy an $800 basic model with iron sights. And then what we will do is train you on how to use that. Okay? So no one has to be John Wick, no one has to be Rambo. At the same time, there are certain skills that are better than firearm skills. Okay? One thing that I'm starting to get into are medical classes, all right? Tactical medical classes. Now, they call it TCCC in law enforcement and military. Basically, stop the bleed, tourniquets, you know, chest seals, all that kind of stuff, right? That skill set alone, having that skill set, you go to a class, you take this, you learn how to use a tourniquet the proper way, you're all set, right? You start having tourniquets around the house in your everyday, you know, that you carry with you just in case, all right? Small medical kit, what have you. In the case that something happens, because let's face it, someone's going to get hurt in an accident more likely than someone being shot in an active shooter event. Your neighbor's out there cutting down a tree branch and they get themselves a chainsaw. Now what, right? From the time you call 911 to the time they show up, usually 5, 6, 7 minutes, okay? In a bleeding situation, that's bad news. If you know how to use a tourniquet, if you have a medical kit, you can go assist that person, right? While 911 is being called. So that is a skill that you should have and keep with you. This comes back into the neighborhood, all right? Now, the only other thing on top of that is with your neighborhood, you get that information, share that information with your neighbors, all right? Don't be afraid to share the information. Hey, this is a great skill to have. Why don't you come to a class with me, all right? Start to get everybody on the same page so that if something happens in your neighborhood, because as we all know, if you look back from Katrina to any type of disasters we've had, what happens? The neighborhoods that are hit are the ones that start to band together. And then you've got to look at who's got what skills in that neighborhood. Right? So if we all know ahead of time what those skills are, we can start picking people out and we can start making our own emergency action plan for our neighborhood. Okay?
So this was a twofer.
It was a twofer, yeah.
Can we make a difference?
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. 100%. Get involved with your police department. Get involved with your fire department. Get involved with the police department. I'm really sorry. Your arm is going to be like super toned when we get down here today. Get involved with the police department. Get involved with the fire department. Plan accordingly. Speak with them about resources that you have available that can help. Speak with your community members. 100%. You can make a difference. I know Rob's going to jump on this, so I don't want to steal his thunder, but be a good witness.
Yep. Be a good witness, but also helping out the police department. I was working in Maple Park, all right, for a while, and Aaron lives in Maple Park. So patrolling around one day, Aaron says, "Hey, if there's anything you need," I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, man." He's like, "No. I've got all kinds of equipment. So if you guys need something, you let me know. I've got a basement full of stuff." So there's that, right? If I'm in a pinch, I can go to Aaron and say, "Hey, you got this, this, and this." "Yes, got it." Right? So we're set up that way.
Good job.
Do you have any comments about how someone would start up a neighborhood watch?
Yeah, Neighborhood Watch, let's take Maple Park for an instant, right? Go to a board meeting. If you guys don't have a Neighborhood Watch where you live, most neighborhoods have them now, but go to a village board meeting, go to a city board meeting, and say, hey, do we have a Neighborhood Watch program? The police department will jump on that because we're all about community relations right now, and that is a great thing because honestly, a Neighborhood Watch program, it's not only good for you, but it's eyes and ears for us. Okay? We can only be so many places so many times. If you guys see things, you're great witnesses, that's a good thing for us and for the community.
Now, would you advise to be careful if you do see something not to confront the person because you don't want to get into the issue of
Yeah,
falsely
absolutely.
accusing someone of...
Yep, and we'll get in, yeah, we'll definitely get into that.
So with your Neighborhood Watch program, a couple things you can do. Years ago, the Neighborhood Watch program would make a call tree. So if I witnessed something and I wanted to get word out to the rest of the neighborhood, it would be a call down tree. With the advent of social media and cell phones, you can get that information out almost immediately now. So there are, in almost all communities now, a what's happening in page. They're very big on Facebook. Twitter is getting heavily involved in this area as well. Those are great ways to effectively communicate. And if you get with your village board or your trustees, they'll help initiate that neighborhood watch plan, and then you can come up with a list of kind of rules and regulations to follow with that.
Who, just on that real quick, who here has a Ring doorbell camera?
Different brand.
Okay, right, we're different brand, but that's a camera, right? Or a camera system out in front of your house, okay? Neighborhood watch, just get with your neighbors, right? And the police, if you see something on your camera, it's recording it, hand it over to the police. Hey, I saw this suspicious vehicle, here it is. Because then what we can do with that is blast it out to everybody. In law enforcement, we can find that.
I don't want to product market here, but there's one home security system. You'll see a lot of commercials for them. I won't say their name, but it will sound a lot like Simply Safe. They're actually, that's with the system I own, I utilize in my house. They actually will use your camera and will send you an invitation to a social media group for your existing area. So if there's something going on or something that's caught on Simply Safe, the notification gets pushed out to everyone else who has Simply Safe. It's mostly like lost cats and dogs, but occasionally it's going to capture some really good information.
I think Ring does that too.
Great, thank you.
Ready? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, transitioning to the more heavy topic. What are good practices during an active shooter situation? Should a civilian attempt to take the active shooter down?
All right, so good practices, as we all know, everyone's familiar with run, hide, fight, I'm sure. You've got the get out of the building, hide in the building, last ditch effort, confront whoever's there, right? So there are those classes you can take. We can talk about run, hide, fight, active shooter, what to do in case of an active shooter. That's usually a 2 to 4 hour class at a minimum. Just getting you involved in what active shooters are. So active shooters, or mass shootings, active shooters, and mass attacks. 3 different things that get confused a lot. I'll give you a quick rundown. What happened at Great America over the weekend is a mass shooting. Okay, 3 or more people injured in one incident. All right, 90% of the time, those are not planned at all. They just happen right away. Something happens, people arguing, fight breaks out, gunfire happens. So that is a mass shooter. Active shooter, we all think, right? Uvalde, Minnesota, they're countless, okay? Active shooter, somebody in a closed environment or populated area coming in, planned, and opening fire. All right, the last one is a mass attack. Mass attack, we look at things like the bombing in Boston, all right, the marathon bomb. That's a mass attack. Doesn't have to be gunfire. Can be anything else, all right? The person that drove through the Christmas parade in Waukesha, mass attack, okay? So those are the 3 things I want you to kind of keep in mind there. As far as attempting to take an active shooter down, does anyone here conceal carry? Anyone at all? Okay. As a police officer, You've got to start looking at the legal aspect of it, all right, and also your skill set. Everyone heard about the shooting in the mall in Minnesota or Indiana, right?
Yep.
Where all of a sudden a guy comes out of nowhere and he fires 10 rounds, hits 8 out of 10 at 40 yards, right? Amazing. Within 15 seconds, took the guy out. That's an anomaly. Okay, that person was well trained and they were on the ball. So your skill set and going up against somebody with a rifle, 90% of the people that I see that are concealed carry holders, they go to the range every once in a while, but they don't train. They don't train, they don't train. I will tell you this, law enforcement, we carry pistols, rifles, shotguns with us every day. We have to, by state standard, qualify once a year. And it is a very, very easy qualification. All right? So law enforcement, we're not as well trained as you all think. It's on us in different departments to train ourselves up. So a lot comes into that. But what I would say in an active shooter environment, as far as engaging the active shooter, unless you absolutely have to, you're cornered and there's no other choice, then you can do it. Then you can do it. But otherwise, get out, run, hide. Okay? Get the people that are around you out if you can.
I'll keep it brief. When we think about an active shooter event and what the best response strategy is, make it akin to a fire in a building, right? Can we agree that fire is a threat? Okay. Can we agree that a man with a gun in a building is a threat? All right. Keep the action planning the same. If you have distance between you and that threat, escape, get out. Number one priority always in either event, escape from the building, flee the facility, and yes, that was a joke for those of you who have young kids who play that Roblox game. Get out of the facility as quickly as you can, as effectively and as safe as you can. Do not worry about any damage that you might cause by breaking a door, breaking a window. Utilize the things inside of your environment if you need to breach that glass or to breach and pry a door open. Get out is always number one. Same as fire with an active shooter event, proximity becomes an issue and a consideration that you must make. Do you remember when we were children going through fire drills at school, or when the firemen would come in and talk about if the door handle's hot, stay in the room and find a secondary way to get out? That was the first lesson in proximity to a threat that we all ever received. Same thing happens for active shooters. If we can hear the gunshots, or we can see the shooter, or if you know what freshly spent casings smell like, these are all senses that will help indicate to you what your proximity to that threat is. If you're close, then we bunker down, right? Barricade doors, turn off lights, close off your cell phone, take those actions. Can a citizen take down an active shooter? I'm going to speak and answer on this strictly utilizing statistics. We have seen it once in the great state of Michigan, where a high school football player who unfortunately lost his life was able to apprehend and stop an active shooter inside of a high school. We've seen it once in the great state of Oregon, where a high school wrestler was able to stop an active shooter event before it started. Now, I can tell you about 70 other events that are active shooter related. Those are the only two that I can think of where a citizen who is unarmed was able to engage with and stop the active shooter. And if my math is correct, that's a 50% casualty rate. These are things that have to be taken into consideration. Now that the statistics are out of the way, I'm retired law enforcement here in the great state of Illinois. My wife is retired law enforcement here in the great state of Illinois. Because I'm retired, I get to carry my gun with me wherever I want, whenever I want, and I have a nice little card that gives me that permission to do so. My wife the same. We have 3 young children. If we are at the mall or the store or out in general public and there's a shooting going on, I will utilize that pistol as a defensive mechanism to get out of the building. Okay? So think about that from a perspective of being unarmed and inside of the facility. Get out as quickly as possible. Only until we have to engage, do we engage. And at that point, it should be all bets off. Anything to add on?
No, well said.
Okay.
Yeah, very informative. What are the components of an emergency action plan? Should employers run training exercises? Some people have never heard what real gunshots sound like. How do we prepare for something like that?
I'll jump on this grenade. All right. Margaret, I think you're picking up. You keep giving me all these loaded questions. Okay. So I'm going to start with the easiest one first. Never heard what real gunshots sound like. How do we prepare someone for that? Okay. We've all heard fireworks before, yes? Okay, so take the sound of fireworks and imagine it to be highly metallic, if that makes sense. Don't forget, a firearm is still just a simple machine that is operated by combustion, okay? So it'll sound, it'll echo very similar to a firework, however, it has a distinct mechanical sound to it. Almost like a house of worship, I'm sorry. Anybody here ever drink a beer? Okay. We all love that first crisp taste, but then you have the aftertaste of beer, and when we're little kids, we hate it, right? So firearms are kind of the same way in the sound. You get that crisp shot, like, oh, that's a firework, and then you have the bad aftertaste, like, no, there's a distinct metal echoing to that. If you don't know, or if that does not do enough to kind of describe it for you, I would really encourage you to go out to a firearms range. You don't have to shoot. You don't have to participate, but go and have somebody fire a few rounds so you know what that sounds like, okay?
If I can break in for a second.
Sure.
The other thing, when we get fireworks calls and we get shots fired calls, okay, there is a distinction. Usually a shots fired call is very rapid succession, right? Bang, 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 bang. And then they stop. Fireworks, sound like fireworks. You're like, oh, okay, great. So there's that aspect to it as well. As far as going to a firing range, really, really great idea. If you've never heard of a weapon being fired, never heard gunshots, go to a firing range. Stand there, because you're going to be outside the firing range where people are actually shooting. It sounds a lot different, more muffled than it does inside the actual range. So you can get a taste of both.
Thank you. Great point. Great point on that. All right, so
Emergency action plans.
how do you prepare? All right, great. Emergency action plan. Okay, so an emergency action plan for any sort of corporate or business entity, government entity, has to include a variety of things, okay? It has to include the type of emergencies, natural disasters, man-made disasters, or issues that your facility location may deal with, right? I think you all would agree with me, an emergency action plan here in Batavia, Illinois doesn't really need to focus on hurricanes. Last I checked, we haven't had any of those jump off of Lake Michigan or the Fox River yet. But we do have tornadoes here, right? We could potentially have flooding here. A few years ago, we had the polar vortex storm, right? Which took out a lot of critical infrastructure in the northeastern Illinois area. I apologize, let me silence that. The emergency action plan has to deal with all of those contingencies. It also has to deal with your facilities-related issues, which would include fires, active shooter events. It should include what to do if there's a power outage. It should include what to do, especially in today's business world, if you lose internet service or phone service. How are your communication channels going to flow? From there, from looking at what type of emergencies you may deal with, it is the distinct planning for each of those and their subsequent contingencies. So, since we're here talking a little bit about active threats, okay, if there's an active threat in the building, what is the company's policy on responding to those active threats? How is 911 and emergency services going to be notified? Where are our emergency exits? Where does our reunification plan? What does our continuity of operations look like? These are exceptionally detailed documents for you business owners. Understand these are not 1 or 2 pagers. These are 1 or 2 books of what and how we need to do things and how our communication flow, our areas of responsibility inside of the organization, and then most importantly, what the continuity looks like after that.
I can break in.
Sure, I'm just going to the next
So with emergency action plans, Aaron was talking about business, right? We can very easily take that and put it into the home. Okay, so when you're at home, what is your plan? What if the power goes out? Do you have a generator, right? Do you have all that kind of stuff? Do you have batteries? Do you have flashlights available? Do you have a fire extinguisher in the house, right? These are all small things you can do in your home. And back again in your neighborhood, you can have a neighborhood emergency action, right? Let's expand a little bit. From your home, how about your car? Okay, we drive our cars every day. Your car breaks down suddenly. Do you have a spare tire? Do you have a medical kit? In the wintertime, do you have a blanket? Do you have extra water? Do you have maybe some food, something else in the car? Do you have a flashlight? You know, do you have a flashlight? That type of thing. So you can take these emergency action plans and move them from business to home to travel. You know, if you're going to go somewhere overseas, you're going to go down to visit somebody in another state. What's your plan if something happens down there? Who's looking out for your house? But what happens if something happens while we are here? Then what do we do? Right? So always have an emergency action plan. Look at the business, but then also at home and in your neighborhood.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So I love to utilize analogies when I'm trying to deliver information to people. Anybody stayed in a hotel ever in your life? Show of hands. Okay. You walk into the door of your hotel room, you just turn around, you close the door. What is posted on the back of the door?
Emergency.
Yeah. That is the most micro emergency action plan in the history of the world, right, folks? So there you go. I think that one probably reached somebody here today. So training exercises, absolutely. I like to use the analogy of when we're running a training exercise, we don't want to wait until the catastrophe has already happened to try and flex that muscle, okay? We need to plan, we need to prepare. If we fail to prepare, then we are preparing to fail when the time comes. These exercises can be a variety of things. Okay, again, speaking from a business mind, this does not have to be an 8-hour or 4-hour event where we are bringing in local resources and public safety. This can be a tabletop discussion. It can be a 15-minute water cooler break discussion inside of your businesses. It can be a brainstorming session. In reality, there are a variety of ways that you can implement emergency action planning and preparation programs into your businesses. But you absolutely, please, if you take nothing else from this meeting, have at least a quarterly review or some level of disaster or man-made issue that you're going to have to contend with, and have a team meeting. And please do me a favor. Do not just involve your senior leadership. Bring in your lowest level employees and get their feedback from it, because they're most boots on the ground. Do you have a question? Oh, gotcha. Bring in your entry-level employees, get their feedback and solicit their input. It will help you greatly as you're putting your action plans together, because they're going to be closest tied to what the business doings are on a daily basis.
Great example of this. Does anyone watch Apple TV? Anyone watch any shows on Apple? There's a show out right now called 5 Days at Memorial. And it's about the Memorial Hospital in New Orleans when Katrina hit. The last episode I watched, levees broke, now they're getting flooded. And they said, we have to evacuate the hospital. So the head of the hospital went, oh, okay, well, let me go check our procedures for that. And she pulled out her book and she's looking through it. There was nothing about evacuating a hospital during a flood. They had no contingency. So that right there, right? We're in New Orleans. I mean, you should have something. What if, right? So these are things that they messed up and didn't plan prior, didn't train prior, didn't review those plans. Okay? So review the plans and be all set. Yes, ma'am.
So repeatedly, both of you guys have mentioned having basically like binders of plans and having these very intricate plans. And from the perspective of somebody who is a mom and a teacher, my brain goes, that's not the functional option for a person with a 4.5-year-old
Sure.
who is going to ask me why.
Right.
So my thought process is, what would you recommend that is a more functional option for, say, like your neighborhood, if you want to have a community plan,
Right.
or for your home, or your complex? Like, what would that look like? Because you were talking about how the back of the hotel room door this is the most basic thing.
Right.
And obviously, we want something a little bit better than that, but like you said, in that episode, you can't have somebody going through a blasted binder.
Exactly, right.
When you have like 5 minutes to make a damn decision. Sorry.
Right.
So like, that's not a functional choice.
Yep.
So then what would you recommend that's obviously somewhere between those two options?
Personally, what I've got 2 boys, 10 and 11, right? So 10-year-old, 11-year-old, my wife, and our dog, okay? So we have trained, we have gamed out. Okay, if there's a fire, what do? Okay, where do we go? If you're outside of the house and there's a natural disaster, there's a tornado, or something of that nature, where are we meeting? Because if the cell phones aren't working, where are we meeting? And if we can't meet there, where else can we meet? Right? So very, very simple. You bring it down to a simplistic level. We were talking about businesses and, a grand scheme and all those plans. But yeah, simplify it at the home, right? As I said, plan for your house. Very, very easy. With your kids, you can even have it as a game, right? Let's do a fire drill once a year. Okay? Where do you go? What do you do? Right? If the neighbor is having an issue, what do you do? Where do you go? Right? So work with your neighbors. Keep it simple. I mean, the KISS system is the best to have. And then, as I said, your car, right? Now you've got a plan for your car, right? If you're out and about, you got a plan for that. So just little stuff that you can easily communicate and drill, and keep it as a game with your kids, and it works out really, really well.
So emergency action plans have to be able to be adapted and scaled, okay? I think Rob brings up the point from the hospital in New Orleans, not to discuss the length or the development of their EAP, but more so the fact that they never reviewed it, right?
Yeah, didn't have one. It's like,
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. So when I say adapt and scale, we want to look at the size, right? What adapt? I have a 4.5-year-old at home too, and for us, when we exercise that, when we flex that muscle, this is all game time, right? Hey buddy, what do we have to do if we need to get out of the house quick? Awesome. Where are you going to go? Great. We actually Friday, we're at the 5-Star Learning Ranch.
Yep.
And we went through a very similar conversation there. And the idea that I came up with them is make your emergency evacuation a game, right? That before the kids breach the door, we're going to make this a game to see who can get to the playhouse with the red roof, which is the farthest away from the school, the fastest, right? That gets kids moving, that gets kids motivated. It allows the teacher then, who now is dealing with a variety of young personalities, to get them all going in one direction. And really, they can self-contain at that point, right? So when we adapt and scale these exercises, we also have to adapt and scale them from our home to our neighborhood. Rob gave you some great information on that. We adapt it into our businesses. It all depends on the size of your business. Are you a 1-room, 900 square foot facility, or are you a 400,000 square foot manufacturing conglomerate? The bigger and more delicate the details are in an EAP, normally from my perspective, that tells me there are a lot more business functions that are going on at that facility, right? So again, adapt and scale. Keep them very simple. The hotel reference is a great reference. I will occasionally have my kids like, great, draw it out. There's a fire in the house, we need to get away, what are you going to do? Have them draw it out. Last thing, and I both love and hate these, but I have every single appointment for my preventative maintenance on my car. I do appointments for my house. They're all inside here, so I can take a 365-day view on what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and it gives me an opportunity. I know if I'm taking my truck in for the oil change, I probably need to get the IFACs out, make sure that everything is in there functioning properly, get my roadside emergency kit out, make sure it's functioning properly, board air, like all these things that I have there as a resource if I ever need it, make sure that they're working. It's a little bit of investment on my time, but that puts me in a position where I have it when I need it, and not needing it and not having it.
I have a question. I'm a business owner, and I think I recognize several of us in the room. Do you train? Every year I get the fire department come in, they're just wanting to make sure the bells and whistles are ringing and dinging and that kind of stuff. It almost seems pathetically poor. That it seems to me at this particular point, we need the fire department and the police department to come in and not only check to see if we could use our fire extinguisher to blind somebody. If we had an active shooter in some of our offices of 900, 1,500, I can't do that plan without the expertise of the guys that could look at our situation and say, here is your action plan. This is what you do. You know, you lock yourself in this room with the fire extinguisher. I'm not likely to have a gun, but it isn't helpful anymore, okay? And because I'm a counseling center, a little bit more at risk, you know, I make friends with the police who park in the parking lot just so they know we're here. But I don't think being a center, being a coffee shop, being an antique store, it just seems to us we're needing something more from our community help that is a little bit better than, that knows our circumstances. You know, for example, July 4th, across the way from my home, kids lost control with the firecrackers, it blew up, their shed was on fire. Okay, first car that came, fire truck, did not have water. So they did not know that in an incorporated area, we are not going to have water. Now, people don't realize in Batavia, on Wenmouth Road, those houses, unincorporated, they don't. I hope the Batavia police would have that done, fire department would better. But by the time the right people with water arrived, 45 minutes had gone, firecrackers were still blowing up, and they never tried to save the building. They just circulated around the building to protect us. And I looked at that and I realized, what if that was a bomb?
No. No. So you bring up, let me dig up this one,
Yeah.
right? You bring up some really great points. And I'm gonna speak a little bit from the heart on this one too. So I retired in 2019, and I absolutely loved policing. It was the absolute right time for me to get out because there was a lot of changes that were shifting with the way public service is being set up and the way that it's being funded, right? What you don't understand, you know, the guys and gals who are running on squads, who are pushing B cars, squad cars for the police officers, they have an incredibly difficult job to do, and here's the reality of their circumstance. Similar to private sector and commercial industry, they can't get people hired. They have very high attrition rates right now. Those are motivated by a lot of reasons. There's been significant changing to the way that they are funded and the way that the individual officers and firefighters are funded as well. For a lack of an easier or more eloquent way of putting it, it's not a job anybody wants to do anymore. So we're even seeing a shift now where what would have traditionally been a police function is being privatized into the security industry. It's a really weird dynamic on that end. We were actually just approached this weekend with the College of DuPage. They have one of the finest law enforcement academies there. They want to open up and work in partnership on a potential security officer track because the security officers are now dealing with things that the police used to deal with. So back to your example with the firefighters, when they come in and they do their testing, the same thing when the police officers come in, they give you that content for your active shooter preparedness and active shooter training. They are going to go through a rather robust training exercise to be prepared to come deliver that content. However, the city is going to have a lot of final say on what boxes they can check and what boxes they cannot, okay? It is different when you look at public and private partnerships and working in those capacities and the recommendations that they can give and the recommendations that they cannot give. So I've tried to speak delicately about that because Yeah, I spent my life.
Industry's full of those examples.
Yeah,
There isn't
right?
a center that
So-
doesn't have that.
So how do you overcome that obstacle? I would challenge you to work with the people inside of this room. So much like yourself, I had a real itch, like, okay, I know what a fire extinguisher will do to a fire, but what would it do to a person? I actually went to environmental health and safety and was like, hey, by the way, what are all these fire extinguishers you guys doing back here? They're all expired, we got to send them back in. Great, what happens if you don't send maybe 10 or 12 of them? Nothing? Really? Can I have them? And now the director of VHS is like, Aaron, you've completely gone off the deep end. I don't know what you're going to be doing. But yeah, sure. We took them out and we tested it, right? And this is what I mean when we talk about that community nature coming together. There are companies that are represented in the chamber who may be going through their recertification life cycle on their fire extinguishers. Okay? Those are all recyclable. They take them, undo the filters, undo the compression, dump them, refill them. Go blow a few of them off. Okay? See what it actually looks like. I will say this to you though. Here's your inside baseball for the day. Do it at somebody else's business because it makes right? So use each other, work in partnership with each other. Find out who's having these exercises. You know, one of the great things about the private sector is there's so much flexibility in the work that you do. One of the great things is here about the village of Batavia. A lot of the buildings are set up to be commercial office spaces. Don't go into this thinking that you're the only entity that needs to do an EAP. Speak with your neighbors. Come together collectively on that, right? Because it's one facility. If you own a business and you're right above that business in the same facility, you're both going to be impacted if one of you has an emergency. And I don't want to take up too much time. Brown Edwards, huge accounting firm out on the East Coast. We're talking to them, helping them out. They're like, yeah, we sit right above the bank. Great, what do you do if the bank gets robbed? We don't know. Actually, we wouldn't even get a notification, right? Is that a problem? Now, can we steer a conversation with both of those entities where they can then come together and get rid of that issue, right? Because they can find ways to support each other.
Just to add real quick, one of the things that my department is doing, and I've kind of headed it up with a couple of other officers, is that we are starting to go out to different businesses. And we walk in during business hours and say, hey, how are you? You know, can we come in? We just want to take a look around, just kind of get a layout of what the place is like. Okay, if we all remember Pratt, 90% of the officers that showed up that responded to the Pratt shooting had never been in that building before, not once. That is not the time for us. You want to talk about emergency action plans and being ready. That's not the time for us to go, oh, okay, let's figure out the layout of this building while things are happening. Okay, so there are things that we can do, as Aaron kind of got at, to get better and work with the community more.
Quick question. Some of these things are focused on businesses as they should be, but I know there's a couple other religious communities here today. And one of the unique situations that we face as communities of faith is our building is frequently full of old people. Wheelchairs, walkers, hearing, visual disabilities and stuff, which just adds even more on top of things. So are there maybe some recommendations that you can make to help us address some of those difficulties? Because if somebody screams fire in a worship service, I guarantee you people are going to sit there and look around like deer in the headlights.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the question back. Does everybody need that question answered? Because I want to be mindful of everyone's time this afternoon.
You know, I think addressing it in context of, she's right about worship spaces, and they're more vulnerable today than schools are, because we've lost it, but it's the same. A diverse group of people gathering, I think it's a very, it hits more of us than I think
it's a good
Yeah,
question.
you can apply it to a public movie theater. You can apply it.
Oh, yeah.
There you
go.
So,
It's an excellent question.
yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that we did, that I've done in training with some religious organizations is you've got a set of parishioners who come in, right? You've got members who come in. Start getting a an emergency team together with those parishioners, right? You can go ahead and put a notice out, right? Hey, anyone who is a first responder, anyone who is, has any type of background, who is a nurse, right? Can we identify you? And then you hold just a volunteer training with them. Hey, what are your capabilities? When are you usually here? Let's make sure. Okay, so if something happens on this day, we've got this person, this person, this person, this person. We know that we have on a certain day so many people in wheelchairs. We have so many people that are not able to move around. Let's have some people that if something happens, hey, it's going to be your job to go ahead and help them move out. So kind of getting a little plan together, right?
Yeah.
You get that plan going and you build it with the right people. There you go.
And you're probably going to touch base on this, but also within any good plan, cross-train, because on any day, certain
I may not be here,
parishioners
that's
won't
right.
be there. So you
Yeah.
have a kind of a hierarchy for each different position that's needed or task.
I'm just going to say really quick, make use of your ushers, designate the space. Movie theaters are great, but movie theaters all have designated spaces, right, with ease of access in and out. And then another analogy that I hope you guys like, you guys have all been on a flight before. Mask comes down, put your mask on first, then help the other person, right? Get yourself going into the direction of a safe zone, and then provide the assistance and support back to them, okay? So again, in a house of worship, utilize your ushers, right? Dual task them. Great thing I like about utilizing the ushers, they've already helped seat everybody. They know where the people are at on the day and time of service. And then have designated seating. ADA is going to put some levels of requirements on you for that anyways. Make sure your ushers will help move your population, move your congregation in that area. So, and then we're going to see you guys here pretty soon
Yeah.
for the
October
active shooter
1st.
response course.
Yeah.
We will go heavy into discussion on that.
We'll save some of the questions till then. We'll go through a couple more of our questions, and then we'll have a panel discussion. So I think a lot of you guys are probably thinking similar questions, and we'll all benefit from those and your expertise. So I'll move on to my next question. Intuitive managers and coworkers may notice characteristics of potentially violent behavior in an employee. What are some of the indicators of potential violence by an individual, and what should someone do if they notice these?
Let me start with this.
Go ahead.
Getting back into situational awareness and knowing who's around you, right? We all have coworkers. We've worked with those people for quite a while, or maybe new, right? Here's the thing. You know if someone's having a bad day. They're quiet, they're storming around, they're not themselves, okay? When you're looking at indicators of violent behavior, usually it's a rule of threes. Okay? You've got to put the puzzle together. Just because someone's mad one day doesn't mean they're going to come in and shoot the place up the next day. All right? But getting to know those people on a personal level and pulling them aside. Hey, Aaron, what's going on today, dude? You want to go to lunch? You want to have a talk? What's up? Right? You're not yourself. Concerned about you. Put it that way. That is a big thing. Now, there are other indicators. Being late for work on a regular basis. Not bathing, always being angry, being very, very distant from everybody else, right? Alcohol, drugs, that type of thing. Being isolated, especially today with social media and everything else, I will tell you this, every active shooter incident, and active shooter, I mean Uvalde, everything else, the active shooter incidents, there has been something going on beforehand. Oh, we should have seen that. Uvalde shooter was live streaming on Facebook, right? Why wasn't that stopped? Why wasn't there red flags everywhere at that point? Okay? So these are the things that you want to start looking at and putting the puzzle together and then figuring out what to do. Now, from there, we've got a whole slew of different things we can do. All right, the first one, I'm going to confide in a peer. Hey, Margaret's not looking too good today. What do you think? What's going on? Right? And then we can get together and talk to Margaret. Or if it's kind of above, I'm going to use above our pay grade a bit, we can go to a manager and say, hey, we've got some concerns. Here's what we're seeing. Right? And then let the manager handle it. Right? So there's that situation as well.
So a lot of organizations, especially on the government side, they're now employing and standing up behavioral threat assessment teams. That is an investment for local and small businesses to do. If you don't have access to that, there is training that is available for human resources personnel through SHRM. Everybody familiar with SHRM? Okay. It's an online platform for human resources professionals. They have some things available in there for behavioral threat assessments. I think, much as Rob noted, the change, and this is what I want to get across, the change has to be significant for the individual, right? So if we have an individual who appears to be a little bit more socially isolated, who appears to maybe pick up a drug or other substance abuse issue, maybe that individual is going through a divorce, a grieving period, make sure that we are adapting and scaling that specific to the individual, okay? Significant changes for that person from their baseline may be much smaller or incremental, but still be significant as opposed to somebody else. When we notice these, you have to be proactive with them, deliver that information up, provide the resources and guidance that that individual may or may not need. Okay? A lot of it starts with the conversation. A lot of it, again, making those recognitions on behavioral changes. So I'll tell you, outside of, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. About 85% of active shooter events are going to start with an individual who believes they have a grievance against that organization. Okay? Do not think it uncommon for the employee or bad actor to directly vocalize that. Okay? If you have an employee and you are issuing discipline or you are issuing a termination for that employee, and they say, I'll come back and shoot this place up, no matter the level of jest or conjecture they put inside of that, that's an immediate notification to the police. Get a report filed. Okay? It is not uncommon for those things to happen. We're back to you.
A couple more of my final questions are hypothetical or theoretical. First of all, you mentioned, kind of touched on this, but do you feel that any of these recent horrific tragedies could have been prevented?
But you just love loading them up here.
Yeah.
That is a loaded question.
It's a very loaded question.
And you know what's great is being very close to this training, being close to some of these events, you have to be careful in the way that you answer. So I will say this, if it is predictable, it is preventable, okay? If we can predict that an issue is going to occur or a situation is going to occur, we should have the foresight to prevent that. As leaders here in the local community, let me ask, how many of you woke up this morning like, yes, I'm going to go to this presentation, it's going to be great, I hope I learn a lot of good information, but that will never happen here? Nobody? I see one maybe? All right, because it's interesting, I ear hustle almost every conversation that I hear when I'm out and around in the Batavia area. That's years of doing gang and dope work, but yes, ma'am. You're going to admit
I woke up this morning and talking about Highland, clearly they have done amazing prep for how they responded.
Sure.
And so I answer that, woke up this morning, that I hope we learn a plan to do the same thing in our community when that day comes, where one of our communities is faced with this.
That's awesome.
And I don't think right now we are at that coordinated level, but that's my fear.
I thank you for that. I thank you for sharing that. I really do. Interestingly enough, I'll talk with you offline. We do a lot of training actually for the Batavia PD. I can't speak much for the fire department, but you've got a pretty high-speed, low-drag group of guys and gals here for this afternoon, okay? They're pretty tough. But let me finish my point on this real quick, Rob. When I'm out here in the local community and people figure out what it is that we do, a lot of the response back that we get is that it won't happen here. And that is the type of terminology that will absolutely, no pun intended, kill an organization or kill a community very quickly. might be the reason why you see some of the pushback or the ideas that are now manifesting that we have to hope we have an effective plan in place here for when it does occur. So again, if it's predictable, it is preventable. As leaders in your community, you're seeing the things that are occurring. We're seeing also, I don't want to make this political, but there's no social demographic that this plagues. There's no economic demographic that this plagues. There is no rural, suburban, urban demographic that this plagues. This is a nationwide variety and intensity and scope types of events that we need to be prepared for. So are they preventable? If we can predict that it could happen, we should absolutely be in front of it. So I know you've got some points.
Yeah, from a law enforcement standpoint, the training since Columbine for school shooters and everything else, every time there's an incident, I will tell you this, we in law enforcement sit back and go, okay, how could that have been done better? And what can we do to mitigate it from happening, right? So the Columbine incident, if you remember, the key was, all right, you got shooters inside somewhere, surround the building, wait for SWAT. Those are the guys that come in with the big guns and let them come in. Didn't work out too well. We unfortunately, Aaron and I were talking about this, Uvalde was just it's like what happened, right? It was just a mess, and I feel for those guys. It was a complete and utter mess. At the same time, I don't like armchair quarterback, so I'm not going to get into details. But that said, we learn lessons from every time. We are reactive, right? We get the call and we go in. We've got to do what we have to do. However, we're starting to look at the proactive parts of it. We're starting to look at social media. We're starting to look at gun ownership. We're starting to look at that type of stuff. And then we're taking these threats a lot more seriously now. Because if we can stop it, if we can mitigate it from even happening, that's the best day for everybody. Right? So we're working on it. We're working on it.
Anybody?
And we're going to go into the question and answer part of this discussion from the group after my final question, which you kind of tied into. Why is gun violence so prevalent now? How does gun violence get amplified? What individuals are at risk for developing this problem? And can we learn enough to create a treatment or prevention strategy? What can we all do to help?
Yeah.
So-
Again, loaded.
Yeah, super loaded question.
But
An easy wrap-up question.
It's
Yeah, very
interesting
easy.
on our notations in preparation. It's capitalized, triple underline, no politics as
Right.
part of it. I think that I'm going to go back to a theme that we've kind of launched all day here today, Margaret. We start at the home where it's small, we go to the street, we go to the community, we go to the town. I think that the violence or the epidemic of violence, and let's be real folks, it is not just attributed to gun violence, all right? We've had 2 issues in Ohio, one with a machete, one with a knife, that both occurred inside of schools. We had Waukesha, Wisconsin, which was a SUV. We had the walkers and runners path in New York City, which was a U-Haul rental truck. It is not an epidemic of gun violence, it is an epidemic of violence, okay? Very important distinction to make there. Starting at the home, we have to take a look at what we're doing as parents. It's interesting. I hear a lot that people say kids today have changed. No, they haven't. They're still kids. They're going to try and get away with everything that they possibly can, right? What happened is the parents changed, right? So starting at the home, what internal reflection are we doing? What growth are we doing? What example are we setting for our children? Taking it to the community, I think we can use those same factors to measure against. What example am I setting? What have I done to help change some of these societal norms or societal ideas here on a local scale? What positive impact have I had upon my community? These are all things that are going to help. So social factors are very significant. The other thing that I have, remember I told you back there earlier, I love and hate these things. I think this is probably the highest degradation we've had as a society. Should not have at the world the world at your fingertips, and you shouldn't have your world at your fingertips for prepubescent, pubescent teenage boys and girls. I see everything from highly violent video games that are being played by children as young as 4 or 5. Why 4 and 5? Because they now have the dexterity to figure out how to operate Roblox, or what's the other one that they're playing where you parachute in? Fortnite, right? There is no longer a realistic understanding that when you commit an act of violence, number one, there's consequences, and that number two, there is a loss, right? About a year ago, I figured out when my kids were playing the game, and they kept saying this phrase, respawn. I'm like,
Yeah.
what is respawn? Like, oh, if you get killed in the game just brings you right back. I said, wow, that is super far from reality, right? So how then do I go and set a positive example for my kids? How do I take them to a point where they've reached a maturity level to show them what it actually looks like when somebody gets shot? Because it's really not pretty. How do we then set that example for our community? What involvement can we do? Not when we have to go out and show graphic videos, but we're having conversations, right? Or pushing more positive development into thoughts and minds of people, right? And I know I reference children there a lot, but the reality is everybody in this room, we can benefit from that. Sure.
Kind of going off of what Aaron was talking about with societal issues. If you look at the gun violence in the city of Chicago right now, when we were all growing up, okay, I'm 50 right now, but I think as a society, we've forgotten and lost the art of communication. Everyone's behind the screen. People can say whatever they want. People get into their own little bubbles where the people they're talking to think the same things they do, say the same things they do, and reality is skewed. Okay, so there's that aspect of it. So if you look at Chicago right now, what's going on with shootings every day, every single day, it's starting to spread even more. But if you look at the statistics, it is in a certain part of the city. Okay, south side, southwest side, this is where it's all happening. Problem is that there's no communication. There's no way to mitigate any kind of grievances with each other. That art has been lost, and then on top of that, the parents haven't pushed that down to their kids. The kids get in with a gang or someone who has a gun. Guns are easy to get a hold of. This guy got me mad, I'm gonna go take him on, right? Or they hurt Aaron, now I'm gonna go take care of it. Right? So that is this cycle of violence that you're seeing down there. So it's, you know, it's a societal issue. That's kind of how I look at it.
Wouldn't you agree that the fact that a lot of our communities actually have a lot of needs that are not being met, like financial instability, home instability, and the fact that a lot of people are working more jobs and therefore not being able to parent is a direct impact even more than any screen? Because if you're not even able to be present, it doesn't matter if there's a screen involved. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference between I'm able to be there for my 4.5-year-old and go like, nah, we're gonna watch positive dinosaur educational stuff that is eating people. You know, like that I can do that because I'm there.
Right.
But if a parent isn't even able to be there and an older sibling who wants to watch something violent is there, that's a different impact, and a lot of that has to do with that. So when you say that actually having more mutual aid and community focus on meeting what we call in education the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is actually going to have more benefit and a more proactive approach to impacting our violence levels?
Absolutely. So one of the things, you know, we talk about the gun violence in Chicago all the time, and we can go down the rabbit hole on this, but, you know, throw some money at it, right? Okay, we're going to throw money at this, we're going to throw money at that. Okay, well, wait a second. Where are you throwing that money? And if you throw the money, how about a community outreach program? How about an after-school center? How about something where you can take kids that have nothing else to do because their parents are working 2 and 3 jobs, and you bring them to the center, and they have positive role models. They have skill sets that they can learn, right? They learn how to communicate with each other. So those are the type of things that need to get done. Right?
You know, I know, to go off of what she said, you know, I'm not sure we're off the pandemic, but we're coming to the end, we think, of a pandemic, whose influence we have not completely digested. Our children are angry, very angry. Adults driving out of anger on the highway, you know, it's not a political thing.
Right.
We're driving really wild right now, and we're struggling with all the professionals, I think churches, human resources, health, to try to figure out what we're doing. So I would say, long before we're looking at what's the trigger, well, long before gun violence or any kind of violence, and violence is clearly becoming a health issue now, okay? Any of us have gone into any of our local hospitals. It's, you know, it's nice to focus on the city. It puts a little distance and gives us false comfort. But it is happening.
Sure.
And I think that we need to work quickly in the dialogue, as you talked about, to figure out what our people need. What are we going to, you know, when parents are told their children are 3 years behind in education because of the pandemic, that's not good news. And that just adds to people's frustrations, you know? And so, yeah, I'm hoping all the security, with that, maybe we enter into a more national or global discussion. What happened to us? How are we different? And how are we interfacing in our society virtually?
Agreed.
Absolutely. I think you're hitting a pretty big nail on the head there, because there's still a lot of residual stress from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Do we have other questions? I know that we have many organizations here that have specific questions about their facilities or their businesses. Do you want to ask a question?
First of all, I want to compliment both of you. I've been through a couple of situational awareness programs already, and you've covered so much more than any of the others that I've been through. The question that I have may or may not be a question or a request. As a house of worship, we have talked in the past about how we can work together with other communities or houses of worship, and I'm wondering if you have any ideas or suggestions, or if anybody in the room would have ideas or suggestions.
So I'll jump into this just because I think you're setting this up still. It might be complete, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we have some work going already where we're bringing houses of worship together collectively to one point where we can present additional content and information. Right? So working in fellowship, working in stewardship all together. Again, sharing those resources. And I'll ask Sue maybe to speak a little bit on it about what we're bringing.
Yeah, it's a little more focused specifically for seniors and situational awareness. It's a two-pronged thing where we're doing safety in the home, physical safety in the home, and then safety as seniors are going out into the community where, you know, to help guide, you know, safety when you're parking,
Right.
you know, walking down the street, being aware of where they are when they're shopping or going to a movie. Do we park under the light? Do we park over here? What do I do if? And we're working on that in conjunction with Bethlehem up in St. Charles.
Yes.
So if you give me your email before you leave, I will send you a flyer. That's on October 1st. And that will be here at Bethany.
I'm also thinking about after something happens. If something happened in a church in our community, how can the churches help each other out, I guess? Or
Well, going off of your idea, what I've seen in DuPage, is that created a triage, and on that triage are the police, the fire department, other churches, and it's the cell phone thing, and it goes out. This is the situation, and people begin to go down. Highland actually had that, because when you look, within 15 minutes, 4 other cities canceled all of their stuff. The parks were closing. So they had a central system. The doctors were being called. They were coming in. And so that's why I asked the most leading question. I'd like to see us eventually do that for these smartphones. And if that first person in counseling's not there, if that and it just goes down, so that people begin moving right to the church that's putting out requests. You know, that's the only way, I
Yeah,
think.
so supplement that. I think as we get more organizations that are working in partnership, we can do series of events, right? And share the resources, share the time, share the space. You know, obviously, we would be glad to come out and help you facilitate whatever sort of training or development piece that you want to do. As you relate to, you know, a post-incident response, you hit the nail on the head. You must have learned a lot today. Really great. What I would say to you also is implementing that concept that I spoke about, the mutual aid earlier, where you can have specific resources, where you might even be responsible to procure specific resources, but you're only tied to one item as opposed to 10, and you work with the churches and houses of worship inside of your local area. Now you guys can implement an action plan. We're, interestingly enough, I'm not going to say the school district, and legitimately I can't because this one's being recorded. We're working with, it's one of the largest school districts here in the Fox River Valley. I know their director of security for a long time. One of the things we're doing is focusing on a regional response for the schools here locally. They don't have that in place, which when I spoke to their director of security, kind of blew both of our minds. They do all this regional training, they do all of this regional preparation, but they have no planning in place for a regional response if and when an incident like this occurs. So understanding the limitations of your personnel and resources, you know, understanding the dynamics of the environment that you operate in, regionalizing the approach gets you valuable assets, gets you valuable personnel directly to the scene to assist.
Question back there?
Hi there. So I'm a teacher, and I am here asking the question. I am a specialized teacher. I work for a cooperative that covers 10 counties.
Okay.
And so our direction from our cooperative is to kind of follow whatever our school districts are asking us to do. And as you can imagine, our school districts, you know, depending on where we're at and how far out we are, have different ideas on how to handle these things. And so I guess my question, to broaden it, other than just situational awareness, do you have any specific tools, resources, suggestions for people who are in and out of a lot of different public buildings in a lot of these areas? I go to 4, 5, 6 different schools in one day. And as a teacher coming back into the school year after Uvalde, we have a lot of questions. Our staffs in our school buildings have the ability to plan, train, practice, communicate with their team, their staff, their people. But we have a lot of people that go in and out of buildings. We have a lot of support staff that are in all of these different places. Now, I've seen on the other end of this where I can't get into a building if I tried. It takes me 10 minutes to get into a building in the middle of the winter in some of my districts. And in other districts, they have no idea that I'm there. So, with that being said, we are all in public places. Do you have any tips, tricks, resources for us?
Okay.
Does this also work to add to that? It applies to like senior citizens who may be less mobile. For us, it's our special ed kids who either have, in our case, vision impaired, but may also have multiple disabilities. So we're taking into account the fact that she and I may be able to run, but who we're with cannot.
And I'm not just with my class. I'm walking through a school building, tragedy happens. What's next? What is my next step to do?
Yeah, we
And,
don't have
and the answer we have right now is just kind of whatever your school's doing, whatever your school says you need to do, just do it. And we're like, okay, that's 27 buildings.
So help me wrap my head around this.
Yeah.
So the way I understand it, paraphrasing back to you, you teach a highly specialized population, but that could be at up to 27 different schools?
I have 30 kids on my caseload, and
Okay.
because there's not a high concentration of blind kids in one place, I travel to meet them.
Okay.
And so I go into all of these different schools. I have 4
Okay.
different districts, and each one of my students is at a different school, and I just travel between.
Gotcha. Okay. And then so the direction from your leadership is to follow whatever the local school's
Yes.
policy is. So then let me ask you a question. Are you accountable to understanding 27 different emergency action plans?
Well, that's kind of why I'm here today, because I would
Okay.
actually like a little bit more guidance and maybe some resources bring back to my leadership at our cooperative to give our teachers just a little bit more security. We're all, secondary mass trauma is a real thing. We're all coming back into the school year after Uvalde. And our school year here ended, and then Uvalde happened, and now we're coming back as a profession really shook.
Sure.
We're all changing our programming, we're changing our security, we're changing this, that, and the other. We're having students come back to us that are scared. I have kids that I work with that says, Miss, what happens if this happens while I'm in the attachment period?
Right.
I can't see. I'm screwed.
All right.
So
let me,
I'm looking for, I guess, answers to pass on my leadership.
Let me ask, when you're in these schools, are you working one-on-one with the student, or is it a small group?
Sometimes both.
Sometimes both.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that's not helpful, sorry.
No, it's okay.
And it's not always in the same place, that's the thing. This job the nature of this job is very fluid, different. I joke that I'm used to setting up on a stairwell for instruction, and sometimes that's the case. Sometimes it's a closet, sometimes it's a table at the library, because
Okay.
that's where we have space today.
Okay. So, there's some unique things that are working there, right? Don't like the idea that you're going to be accountable for 27 different emergency action plans. You just need a very simple and very standardized approach to this type of event. I would highly recommend that you follow, we call it in Control Force, our clear, cover, and counter methodology.
Is that
I can do
a
this all day
kid
long. I think so. If you're in a one-on-one setting, there are some ways. I actually would love to link up with you offline. There are some ways that we can teach you how to physically escort and move in a very rapid fashion with a child. There's also some methods we can teach you that you can employ using the children and their ability to sensate and touch, how we can get you to move 4 to 5 kids in a very rapid fashion, very safely through a congested area. I think also, so we have a program, it's called our ASARS program, specifically talks about reaction strategies, and this is customizable depending upon the environment you're working in. But again, it standardizes your thought process, because what I don't want is now you're in school, something bad happens, and you've got to figure out, okay, I'm at Washington, or am I at Jefferson School, what are the policies? You need to be able to be quick and reactive on your feet, how to identify where your entrances and exits are, how to find the proximity of the shooter, utilizing your senses, and then you utilizing those kids' ability to sensate, move them to safety or move them out of the facility. And then I can go over some stuff with you, how to reunify those children back into the school. So yeah, these are all things for all populations when you have a special circumstance, right? Understanding what those are. Somebody who's blind, and please, you can throw something at me if I'm wrong. Someone who's blind, their other sensations are going to be very good. They'll be able to hear and feel. We have some techniques that we can come in very close proximity. This doesn't hurt them, but if I can teach a student to lock in right here, they don't need to be able to see, and they will be able to lock on and go with me wherever I need to get them to. Right? So there's some things that we can do with that. It's also great for your senior population. If you have a medical emergency and you need to move somebody, go right here. So really, I don't mean to brag, but there's a great photograph with me from the presidential rally in 2016, carrying a guy up outside of the UIC pavilion just like that. And people was, oh, the police are beating this guy up. Like, no, he was a diabetic, and if you see in the photo, he's fainting. But I was trying to carry him out from the madhouse that the Trump rally became.
So to dovetail on what she's saying, we kind of have the same issue here. Straight across the courtyard there, that's AID.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That building right over there, that's Elder Day, and they deal solely with people with Alzheimer's and related dementias. Now, each one of those are separate entities. They have their own staff, their own administration, and their own boards. However, they are part of our family,
Right.
so we are also responsible for them. So, it's kind of hard to come up with a plan.
It's a matter of communication and a matter of the heads of each of those areas saying, hey, we're going to work together, because divided we're going to not do well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, if something happens,
Well, it has to be something that they can do on their own too,
Right.
because there's a
Right.
lot of times where they're still
They're working. and
seeing
we're gone.
patients and
Everybody's gone.
clients, and there's not but maybe 2 people in the church building, so.
Hopefully this gets the discussion going between all
Yes.
those
Other
organizations.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So at House of Worship Preschool, we oftentimes, particularly on the church side, we're trying to strike this balance between safety and welcome, right? Well, we want our home to
Yep.
be secure, and yet we also don't want to exclude, we talked about locking the doors on Sunday morning, those kind of things, and we do have those securities in place for during the preschool time. But any advice for large worship gatherings, and striking that balance between hospitality and security?
Sure, and that's one of the secrets of security. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's one of
you
the
don't
secrets.
you don't want to have anyone going to an armed camp, right?
Right.
The first time they started talking about, okay, well, what are we going to do about active shooters? Great, we're going to hire a bunch of veterans.
Right.
We're going to put them in body armor with AR-15s, and they're just going to stand around. They'll be nice, they'll talk to the kids, but they'll be ready to go. I'm not sending my kid to that school, I'm sorry, right? Not only, I mean, they may be the best trained guys in the world, however, I don't want my child seeing that every single day. There's no reason someone should go to school in fear. It's the same thing where you're supposed to be welcomed into an area, and it's locked down. It's a very distinct balance that you gotta work on. Looking at security standpoints, you can hide security to the normal eye to make it look like it's very, very welcoming, but at the same time, you're ready to go. And that's something that we can definitely help you out with. There's a lot into it. There's a lot that goes into that. Yeah, we can help with that.
Give you 30 seconds on this. Drapes, curtains, and light are going to be your biggest friend, okay? Understand dynamics of light. It is very easy to see let me reframe this. If I am outside, it's very hard to see into a darkened structure, right? So utilize that anomaly when you're playing with light at your facility, especially if you have any evening or early morning worship services, or if you're opening the school early. Light plays a very significant dynamic where you can hide inside of shadows for your observations, right? Conversely, you can cast that light to eliminate all of those shadows. Curtains and drapes are going to be exceptionally important for you. Curtains, number one, will help you with the casting of light. Number two, they'll provide you some concealment. They're still very welcoming. You can utilize different colors based on the worship season that you're going into. Utilize the curtains in order to control the environment both inside and what can be seen from the outside. Drapes, greatest protective measure in the history of the world. Anybody know how the United States president is moved if he needs to go through an open area? Anybody know how the U.S. president is moved if they have to go through an open area?
Under a drape.
Who said it? Curtains, absolutely. It's called the drape wall, right? It's not ballistic, it is nothing. It is just rods and curtains that are hung, and that's how the U.S. president is moved. So think about that, and as you are walking through your congregation area, see where you might be able to use a drape to cast a shadow or to conceal. You might want to conceal an exit, right? Or you might want to use that to direct people to specific areas that'll help you out quite a bit. So yeah, curtains, drapes, and lights. And you've been dying back there for your question. So.
I worked for previous to this, I worked in Oak Park off of Harlem Avenue at a synagogue, and we had a preschool in there. So I understand that. We had constant threats. It was a lot of fun. But there was that balance of, how do we secure the kids while they're there, but also let people in. So we did have like one door and then another door. So we let people come into that one when they have their bus. But again, we want to let people in. We're giving them food, we're giving them gas cards, we're giving them this. So we had a system in place so when I wasn't in the classroom, I was sitting in the front office. I was the, hey, how are you face? So I had my little finger on the trigger, and the executive director would be in her office, and it'd just be one of those things like, if I press this, she gets notified, she does it. But, there's only, as long as you have those plans in place, it's better than people in, so there's that game of
Yep.
balance and just talking with the executive directors, who are the people that are there all day, and coming up with a plan for them to do that.
One more quick 20-second analogy, going back to air travel, right? You step onto a plane, who's the first person you see? Flight attendant. Good morning. Welcome aboard. Good morning. What do you think they're doing? They're sizing everybody up. Who can help, who's intoxicated, who's a threat, right? Easy peasy.
Are there any other questions out there? Does somebody else have a question for Rob or
I
Aaron?
would say one other question. So our program is out and about a lot. We are not just in our building. I know that it puts us at a greater risk, but it is a risk worth the benefit. It's a risk versus, it's the benefits outweigh the risk. So we are active in the community. A lot of the places know us. I know, and I feel like all of you know that, get to know the people in the community. If there is an incident, you know that you can swipe into that business real quick or run into the thunderstorm starts and like, crap, it's like, now I guess we're gonna go hang out at Limestone for an hour or something. But I think you can be prepared, but I think just knowing your community and knowing what's there and the best thing to do in that opportunity
Right.
is what you can do. So I know, like I always tell my teachers, I'm like, I don't care if you break a window, have to break open a wall, you get out. I'm not gonna be bad, so get out. I'd rather have a broken bone or a scratch or a bruise than something happening. So whether it's a fire, an active shooter, anything. So that's something that I tell them all the way, because you obviously can have that plan, but you don't know what is gonna happen until that moment. So I always just like to make sure that, everybody knows you do what is best in that moment, despite having a plan. So that's something that we do, but just, being aware, and I think you all are pretty good. Little eyeball cars that they drive by funky down Suicide Prevention Street, they're going slow. Actually, they will apologize to a parent coming for a tour, because I literally was like, what? But, just being aware and all that, and letting the police know you're there. I don't know. It's just being planned, but
That's awesome. Thank you.
it doesn't go that way, so you gotta go with what your gut tells you sometimes too.
Mine might be very specific. So I'm HR at a local Batavia manufacturing company. So our doors are secure. We're lucky. You have to have a key or get buzzed in.
Okay.
My problem is my employees prop the doors open when it's hot out. Therefore, it totally defeats the purpose, and I tell them time and time again, hey, I just fired somebody. You never know. And maybe I overthink it, but you never know if someone's going to come in here. So how do you tell them that while being mindful of their working conditions, because they are working in a very hot warehouse on their feet all day?
Okay, so this is a great question. You're asking what appears to be a very simple question, but the answer is actually highly complex,
Yeah.
because you need to actually instill a culture of safety inside of the organization, right? The employees are gonna continue to break the rules until they have an understanding of what the consequences could be.
Right.
Not just, oh, I might get fired or I might get disciplined for my day. So you have to instill a culture of safety. You have to instill also programming where it is not only permissible but expected that if somebody sees something that is outside of the norm,
Right.
that they can take an immediate action to correct it and then report it,
Yeah.
right? One of the things that would be great for that would be coming up and have your operations team monitor security breach reports, right? So it could be a quick 3-line report where date, time, door number, and what was the type of breach. Was it propped? Was it ajar? Is the door malfunctioning? Have them run a training segment with the members of the production team out there on the floor on how they're going to do this, make sure that everybody has them. Now they can fix and correct that issue, compile a report. If you need review now for disciplinary action, you can go back to cameras. You have a timestamp or at least a window that you're working from. More importantly, you'll start to see a cultural shift because everybody's now invested through a quick reporting tool on making sure the doors are propped. I would strongly suggest, just from a leadership position, following that up with some type of system to get air movement inside of there.
Right.
I think also the NFPA and OSHA standards are going to require that, so you want to take a look at that as well.
Right. I mean, we follow all that, but they're still at the top. You know?
Jump out, yes, we're going to get warm.
Yeah, so I get it. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
One last question before I wrap up? Before we wrap up? You know, I think we learned a lot today, and it's definitely necessary information that we all need to know. We all need to be aware. We realize today that we all need to communicate. I think that's a key lesson from what you presented is neighborhood watches, reaching out to other, having churches collaborate, having neighboring businesses collaborate, coming out with a plan, being very aware of our surroundings is key. Each of you should reach out to the police department and fire department and have them walk through your facilities because, like Rob said, you don't want that to be the first time something goes wrong. That's the first time they've ever been entered your facility, so invite them. I know they're happy to support our community, happy to partner. And then reach out to Controlled Force. They're wonderful consultants. They're located here in Batavia on River Street. We're lucky to have them, so local and so willing to help us. So if you need contact information, come up and talk to Rob and Aaron. Is it on your brochure too?
Yeah.
There's brochures on the table, so please grab those. So again, Rob and Aaron, thank you so much for what you do and how you help us in our community. And thank you all for coming. I know you guys being more aware makes us all safer as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.